So, have you guys read this article from Time Magazine? Okay,
yes.
Good. I'm glad they're prepared. So let me know if you read this and if you think it's an unfair characterization for folks out there. But Time Magazine basically admitted, well, before we get to Time Magazine, some of you may have forgotten that Joe Biden said this.
We have put together, I think, the most extensive and inclusive voter fraud organization in the history of American politics.
Okay, on its surface, that seems bad.
I think it's missing context.
When you extend the context, you realize he's crazy. So I think he meant to say something else, but I don't exactly. Could you imagine if Donald Trump had said that? Like, the point is, like, I don't think if there was mass voter, I think the last person to know would be Joe Biden.
They'd be like, huh?
Right?
He's not.
Because they'd be like, you can't let him know about it for crying out loud. We have to cork his fork so he doesn't lose an eye when he's out there eating filet. We can't tell him about the massive. So anyway,
it's funny if they see the fact check on that one. It says Joe Biden has dementia. He didn't really mean that.
Yeah.
Mostly false. So he was mostly right, and this is according to Time Magazine. It was actually an election fortification system.
Oh, good.
Like cereal with vitamins.
Yeah.
So last Thursday, Time Magazine ran this article. It's called The Secret History of the Shadow Campaign That Saved the 2020 Election. Now, I encourage you to read the full article. We link to it at louderwithcrowder.com because I know what people will say that we're taking this out of context because they're trying to spin everything I'm about to read to you as a positive, but some would argue it's tone deaf.
Yeah, maybe. Just the title alone.
So this is the article it's describing. It's meant to be sort of satirical, but look, it says a well-funded cabal of powerful people ranging across industries and ideologies working together behind the scenes to influence perceptions, change rules and laws, steer media coverage, and control the flow of information. They were not rigging the election, they were fortifying it. And they believe the public needs to understand the system's fragility in order to ensure that democracy in America. So look, here's the thing. They're trying to say they weren't rigging the elections. They were just trying to make sure that the elections were fair and that Donald Trump was silenced from all private industry. And it talks about the AFL-CIO, big tech, media. They're trying to say it wasn't rigged, and I understand what they're saying, through anything like Dominion or a massive voter fraud scheme. What they're trying to say is we were rigging it by making sure that the media covered Donald Trump negatively compared to Joe Biden at 9-1. They were rigging it in the sense that they made sure Hunter Biden was removed from big tech as false information. They were rigging it to make sure that people could vote by mail with no identification for the first time. They were rigging it to make sure that anything Republicans suggested as voter security would be considered racist and their lackeys in big tech would continue putting. That's what they were doing, and they were doing it for your own good. Here's more from the article. They got states to change voting systems, and laws, and help secure hundreds of millions in public and private funding, Zuckerberg there. They fended off voter suppression lawsuits, recruited armies of poll workers, and got millions of people to vote by mail for the first time. Go back to our vote by mail article or a video that we did where we just documented elections that had to be overturned or rerun because vote by mail was a problem. Not saying fraud. There were errors with vote by mail, almost by design here. They successfully pressured social media companies to take a harder line against disinformation and use data-driven strategies to fight viral smears. In a way, Trump was right. There was a conspiracy unfolding behind the scenes, one that both curtailed the protests and coordinated the resistance from CEOs. Now listen, this is very clear that Democrats are trying to steal the next elections. I can't talk about the previous elections, but what they talk about here, very clear they're trying to rig the elections, trying to steal the next elections. Very clear what they're trying to do through voter laws, what they're trying to do without voter ID by having massive immigration and amnesty. So since we could, of course, be punished for this, hit the notification bell, which may or may not work by the time you're clicking this because subscriptions don't necessarily work. You're about to say something.
I was going to say, so they assume that they're on the side of the angels here, right? That they're doing the Lord's work, essentially, and everything that we do to silence any of this stuff that we don't like to hear, any of the viewpoints that we don't like, is good, and it's good for you. And I think the scariest...
Good for you?
Exactly. Well, that's the scariest part of this, because they think that they're so right. They're like, we silenced all these other... Do you hear what you just said? You silenced opinions you disagreed with simply because you disagreed
with the word cabal.
Well, here's the thing. They're trying to use it ironically, and I understand people will say, you're taking this out of context because they're talking about actually making the elections better. But the way they do it, think about this for a second. They are describing the Hunter Biden story being removed. From social media. That's by design. They're saying this. This is by design, and hundreds of millions in private and public funding, things that happen in the election that cocked your eyebrow like, it seems weird that they're punting the Hunter Biden story. It seems weird that they're punting the Kamala Harris story about imprisoning nonviolent drug offenders. That's by design. The election wasn't rigged by just vote. We're not just talking about long before that.
Yeah.
You cannot compete against the kind of free advertising that the democratic system gives you. Their final quote, a couple more quotes says, I think I read that, they fended off voter suppression lawsuits, recruited armies of poll workers, got millions. Yeah, so they got people to vote for mail by the first time, recruited armies of poll workers. Armies of poll workers, which on its face sounds crappy enough, but it seems increasingly, like how, did that play a significant role? Armies of poll workers in this completely fair, 100% legitimate election. We cannot criticize it, otherwise we'd be removed from YouTube. There's voter fraud that occurs individually, but did not affect the election in any way.
Yeah, all right.
Armies of poll workers. Let's see what they did.
And I have seen some women who came to me and said, let's get these MFs out, accusing them of something like your mask slipped, you were not 6 feet away, so you need to go out, and your phone was out, and they were really intimidating all these white people.
So they had the shift change. At 6 a.m., Mr. Baxter and his management team got back on the microphone and said, this is what the new shift change, right? The new employees says, this is what democracy is supposed to look like. Right in front of everyone, the whole room cheered.
Remember this guy? The army of poll workers booted him, even though he had every right to be there.
This is the city of Philadelphia.
Nothing to see here.
Wow.
Nope. Just breaking the chain of custody.
I just got over all this. Y'all done pissed me off again.
All over again.
Well, it's just, this is what they said, right? Yeah. Most vote by mail. Right, and this wasn't the same process as an absentee ballot.
No.
By the way, this is one of those things where it's a United States issue. Other countries don't look at voter ID as racist. Like, what? How you guys don't have vote? You don't have any kind of identification that's needed for voting?
How do you know?
Really? How do you do the vote? Well, that sounds silly, right? This is accepted. All the countries that you love to praise, right? Like some of the socialist ones and the Norwegian countries that really are the population of the state of Rhode Island and are entirely homogenous. It looks like skim milk if you actually look at the demographics.
Yeah. What I don't get when Democrats are doing all this, why the Republicans just let it happen? Didn't do anything.
They didn't do anything. They certainly didn't do enough. And this is one of those things too. Democrats were talking about it. You can look at the Jimmy Carter Commission. You can look at the letters from Elizabeth Warren and Amy Klobuchar specifically that were being sent to. I don't know if it was the parent company of Dominion, where they were expressing obvious. They had doubts in the security of our election, and Republicans did not do enough.
No, absolutely not. And when we had the laws changed, when it quoted that part, says we got what laws were changed? Was this in Pennsylvania where you changed the law illegally to make it okay to vote after the deadline and not?
Well, that wasn't the only state to do that.
No, I know. I'm just saying, like, that's one of the biggest, right? So, tell all of these things that you're bragging about, all these things that you're so patriotic about doing, right, to help fortify our election to make sure that. What did you actually do? Tell me what laws you changed that were for the good of the people.
Well, the labor unions who were behind this, where it talks about the article, they put themselves out of a job with the pipeline. They're like,
kind of nice.
More. Oh, that's not your first move as president.
No.
Day one?
I'd like to announce my Keystone Pipeline czar. Hey, we're going to shut it down. Oh, man. Bruce Springsteen has no qualifications as it relates to energy independence.
Unemployment's coming to town.
Yeah, born in the USA. Such a communist.
That's pretty bad.
Anyway, listen, go read this article. And I know that people say you're taking it out of context. No, I understand that they think all of these things are for your own good. I think that it's pretty crappy, and I think that now they're flagrantly admitting to things that Republicans were complaining about and sounding the alarm about. Now it's just they know nothing can be done. They know nothing can be done. Republicans didn't fight enough back then, and you're going to see all these Republicans grow a backbone now and be the party of no, like with Barack Obama. Don't you do that. Really?
Right.
What happened when you had power? Nothing. Mitch McConnell, you did nothing. You win nothing. Good day, sir.
Right. Well, there's a common thread here between Antifa and what the left is doing right now. Antifa is this party that's supposed to be, or this group, it's supposed to be against fascism. And they're against fascism by being fascist.
By being fascist,
And so Democrats are supposed to be for fair elections, and they're being for fair elections by rigging elections, essentially the safe, fair elections. I'm sorry, I misspoke.
Yeah,
that didn't have any widespread fraud.
No, there was no impact on the final election. Of course, we would never say on YouTube that there are verifiably tens, hundreds of thousands of votes that are at the very least illegitimate and couldn't be counted. That they didn't do paper ballot recounts, and that there still are some cases moving through the courts. We can say that all of these things obviously added up in tandem, but none of it impacted the election, Ms. Wojcicki.
Watch Good Morning Mug Club live every Monday through Thursday at 10:15 Eastern.